Welcome to Nokolo's Touch for Beauty and Perfection Spa.
Is that I write as an observer of human values. Leadership in the context of women, then you think women should somehow adjust something, the essence of leadership, when women just need to be who they are and still lead. At the same time, I don't think men should be disappearing and that we should get rid of men because they're toxic and they shouldn't exist and hashtag men are trash. I am not, and I really need to say this boldly, I am not from that school of thought, and I doubt I ever will be. Society is a family. So you have my family, you have your family, you have your family. So if you want to fix the community or society, you don't wait to speak in parliament. You need to go back to your house, fix what's happening there before you try to attend. So if you are unclear about where you come from, what do you think are your chances of succeeding in even becoming anything? So, and I always say individualism to some extent, actually, in my view, is the enemy of humility.
A timely voice.
Adventuality SA presents
The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who will not be bought or sold. Men who in their inmost souls are true and honest. Men who do not fear to call sin by its right name.
Men whose conscience is as true to duty as the needle to the pole. Men who will stand for the right to the heavens, boy.
The Advent Pod SA.
Well, you know what time it is, ladies and gentlemen. It is the Advent Pod SA. Oh, a timely voice indeed. And guess what, man? It's about that time and we are bringing you a very special edition of a book club. You know, Malcolm X succinctly states in one of his books or his articulations that if you want to hide something from the Negroes, if you want to hide something from the black man, you better hide it in a book. Because reality is due to the systematic oppression that we are facing as a nation. We are not only left poorly fed, but we are left poorly read. But that's why we are here, the Advent Pod SA, a timely voice, changing the narrative one episode at a time. Hence, we are bringing to you one of our own. We are focusing on The Heart of a Homemaker by the author, Jabulile Buthelezi-Kalonji. Ma'am, welcome to the Advent Pod SA.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I mean, it is an honor to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Been so much, quite humbled. Yes. All right, no problem. And it's Women's Month, and I've got a very special guest, one for the future, one that we have spotted, who will be running this ship with me. Mihlali, hi there.
Hi everyone, it's your girl Mihlali Dibax, and this is the Advent Pod SA. I hope you have a great time. While we will be interviewing a very phenomenal woman for Women's Month.
Oh yes, it's all about Women's Month. Woman. Yes. Now, we are with Jabulile Buthelezi-Kalonji. She's a writer, public speaker, and she has founded the Township Press. And we'll be focusing on the heart of the homemaker. So, Jab, we're not focused today necessarily in the typical interview of who you are, where you're coming from, and all of that, all right?
Thank God for that.
We are more interested today on what you have produced.
Yeah.
And it's the heart of the homemaker.
Yeah.
Maybe let's start here. What is the significant role of matriarchy, especially in who you have become and society at large? For the person watching there, Abo Mama, Abo Gogo, you know, they play such a phenomenal yet often downplayed role in society. And I want you to take us through what role do Abo Mama, Abo Gogo play in our nurturing and in our development?
Very brilliant question, and also very, very important question, Nkabile. I mean, it's probably one of my favorites. I think matriarchy is the cornerstone of society, of African society, and I think this has always been the case. A lot of things have changed and kind of let this ideal fall within the periphery. But I think when you really trace our roots as African people, women have always been at the heart of things at home. I mean, hashtag homemaker, but also just generally even women who, I know right now the narrative is different. Women are leaders and really pioneers across different sectors and spaces. But you really trace back the essence and the power and the sense of leadership of a woman. You will find that they've been the center of everything at home. So even when the man brings in the money, he will bring the money. He goes out, he works, but he will bring the money to the house and give it to a woman who will then do stuff.
Right.
And I always call them the good governance folks, right? Because then they take this money and it goes to wherever sphere it has to go to. This one will do this one will do that. That's the kind of management I think. Women have always had this power. It's something innate, by the way. God made them that way.
Sure. Type of the back scenes type of roles, I believe, like in which, I actually think as men, we might be the initiators, but women are much more of the executors. Like, Ubaba will come and he will speak. But the question is, who has influenced the content of that articulation?
Yep.
I really strongly agree with Nkapile. I really believe that women are core or the influence behind people in general, especially how men become. And it's important for us to note their role in society. I just want to find out, in your writing of the book, what specific aspects in matriarchy or in society as a whole, especially African society, do you genuinely explore on a deeper level? Like what values and
So, the book has a number of values, and I did this deliberately. It's got 21 chapters and over probably, 30 aspects of different values. And I actually do say, by the way, in the synopsis that I write as an observer of human values. So I'm not writing because I'm any expert or on anything, but I'm really just wearing that spectacle of a person who's been raised from an typical African setup family, but also who's taken a liking to certain values that I come from. So it was easy to write about some of the things because I had to really just take a visit into how I was raised. But one of the values I specifically and deliberately highlighted in the book, and I did this deliberately because of the counter narratives that exist now, which can be problematic, exciting, fascinating, depends on where they find you at your level in your life. But there's so many of them. But I really wanted to uphold specifically the ideal of family. That's the first thing. I'm very passionate about family. And I don't think, anything should bother that, right? Because it's a God design, right? And I also deliberately pushed the ideal or the value rather, of Ubuntu, because I feel like it's really not a new phenomena, really. This is who we've always been, long before the late Rev Tutu, Archbishop, really made it fashionable, which was great. But this is who we've always been as African people. We are people of Ubuntu because we come from a communal space. Sharing is natural to us. And the last one I put up is leadership, and I did this deliberately as well. Because you think leadership, you think men, and if you think leadership in the context of women, then you think women should somehow adjust something to fit into a particular look to then qualify or justify the essence of leadership, when women just need to be who they are and still lead.
Sister, I think you mentioned something important, and I think it's where the feminine and the masculine intertwine now. And, in the society that we live in, we see that men and women, instead of complementing each other, we are competing with each other. But I want to know, you're now a woman of great substance and of value. Just from practicality basis, Gogo, umama, what are those teachings that they instilled in you that are still there? Like,
Yeah. I love that question. and I'll tell you why. I love it because I'm a Gogo's kid. I was raised by my grandmother. By the time my grandparents received me, really, I was a teenager, fully fledged with good manners. They had it easy, right? And there was no particular reason why I was raised by my grandparents, but, my grandparents just really wanted to give, I suppose, the newlyweds time to explore each other. But one of the reasons, I take, and by the way, in my family, there's a lot of women, a lot of female, a lot of women. I take from them issues or rather elements of resilience, which people don't like much, but I always say there's nothing wrong with the word resilience. It really, again, depends on where it finds you, but there's nothing wrong with that word. It simply means a person who's consistently not giving up and really true and assured and, and assertive in their cause.
Say, there's a negative inclination.
Yeah.
Because even me, when you told me about it, it means I'm thinking it's enduring, well, that's a good word. Okay? Yeah.
But you see, these are the narratives that are problematic. You see, there's words that exist. There's nothing wrong with those words. Of course, the current narratives that now that are sort of attached to the words, the nuances that now come with the sense of new age gospel or modernism that comes with these words that are now attached to. There's nothing wrong with the resilience. I look at resilience and I have no problems with the world, and I always say this when I even use it as a hashtag on my social media. I have no issues with resilience. Resilience actually would describe part of who I have been for a very long time in my life. I've been a resilient woman. There's nothing wrong with anything that was not necessary. It just means it meant I was pressing on and quite determined in my cause. So again, some things, it depends where they find you. But I always feel like we need to be careful also just to contextualize some of the fuss and the hype that comes with words that are not problematic, but what do you attach to it? Of course, you've got to be able to speak against the notion of ubegezela, if you don't have to really, and speak up against abuse or whatever the circumstances may be. But also resilience, I believe, is a principle that perhaps any human being, not just women, should be able to have in order for you to be able to persist to do other things. If you're not resilient, chances of you succeeding are very minimal. So there's nothing wrong with the word. But those are some of the things I would say I've learned from my mom, my grandmother, my aunts. Resilience, love, compassion. I mean, there's a number of them. Being able to serve, especially the art of service. It defines my entire life. My grandmother instilled that in me. And I think that's why the church gets away with so much when it comes to me. Because I'm a servant. But of course, you have to have certain boundaries. But I was raised that way. Serve if you can. And when you do serve, be diligent in it.
Just to ask a follow-up question on what Nkapile has just asked. Which chapter would you say speaks to you most currently where you are in life now? So had you not been told that lesson, which chapter speaks to you most currently from the book?
Yeah. Hey, that one is easy. I mean, it's easy and difficult. It depends.
Yeah.
But I love chapter 9. It talks, I think is it chapter 9? I think it talks about taking a stand. Am I correct? So you write a book, but you forget which chapter is which. I think so. There's a chapter that talks about taking a stand, and then I write justice and compassion. Yeah. And you really don't think these two go along, social justice. I mean, being I suppose a trained journalist and really just an activist. And I blame my father for this because he schooled me politically very well, very early on. So I've always been pretty clear about stuff, right? And I thank him a lot for that. But it's my favorite chapter because I also wanted to highlight it to kind of bring some sort of assistance to this fight of, I'm a Christian, but I can't be involved in politics. How far can I go? Should I even? And I always say how God has capacitated you, your skill set. It's not a mistake or, he was very deliberate because there is a role you've got to play in the broader societal aspect of things. I mean, you cannot be the light and the salt of the earth if you cannot make the impact that's required when it matters most. So there's nothing wrong with social justice. This is why in the book I then even say, even worse or rather even better, as a Christian, link it with compassion.
Sister Jawi says, you are the salt of the world, not of the church.
Yeah.
And I think we have that as Adventists now, in which, our isolation has led to our extinction.
Yeah.
And what God wants of us is to contact the world without contamination.
Exactly.
But back to the book. I love, I thought when you say matriarchy, heart of a homemaker, that you're a proponent of matriarchy. And you therefore reject patriarchy. But to my surprise, because, patriarchy is linked to toxic masculinity and all of that. To my surprise, you're actually a proponent of patriarchy. And you come from a Zulu kingdom, arrogant, like, I want to know, what were you exposed? What kind of patriarchy were you exposed to that made you such a fan?
Yeah, that's a interesting one. I mean, you grew up in a Zulu man's house.
Yeah.
You better know your place. Whether you, no matter how smart you are, you better know your place, Nje, growing up and being raised Zulu. But that was not toxic. Okay. And this is what I'm saying. I do not belittle anybody's lived experience. Okay. And at the same time, I don't think men should be disappearing and that we should get rid of men because they're toxic and they shouldn't exist and hashtag men are trash. I am not, and I really need to say this boldly, I am not from that school of thought, and I doubt I ever will be anytime soon. I have brothers, I come from men who have raised me, who in fact have empowered me to even step into my power as a young black woman. So I do not have that frame of a toxic male. If I do encounter a problematic male, equally so I have been built by strong, smart black men in my family who've actually equipped me on how to even handle a problematic, toxic male, right? So I'm quite equipped to deal with a male person from human to human. I'm a married woman in my home, in my house. My husband is my head. He's the priest of the home.
Yes, ma'am.
And the moment he stops giving direction, there'll be problems. I'm very clear about that. It's never been an issue. I was clear about it from before I even got married because I'm a Christian woman and that is the subscription I take. So I was saying earlier, I don't think some narratives are problematic more than them being more helpful. But I do want young people to guard themselves, again, with trying to really link up with certain narratives, I think, right? Because you want to be able to be in a position as a Christian young African child, be in a position that can positively impact. Impact is impact, there's impact, but what kind of impact? And I always say positively and progressively make an impact that even impacts beyond your immediate society or your immediate space. So I do not have a toxic understanding or frame of patriarchy. I have no issues with that. And I'm grateful because I feel like there's a lot of learning we need to do, both male and female, on learning and unlearning the toxicity that then comes, I suppose, with other issues that are problematic. We do have abuse even in the church, yes. It's a fact because we also can't hide our heads in the sand. We do have certain issues that are a problem. But they're not just a church problem, they're also a societal problem, right? And patriarchy is at the center of that. I don't want to go deeper, by the way, talking about patriarchy.
It's not only a church problem, but a society.
It's a society.
So you might actually realize what we're experiencing in the church is a result
opening
of
our
society.
side.
In my view, one of the reasons I'm passionate about family is because society is a family. So you have my family, you have your family, you have your family. When all of us leave our homes to go to the world, to go to work, and our kids go to school, we are a society, a community. So if where I come from, there's problems, there's issues, there's no stability, no order, no whatever, there's just issues. It is going to reflect in who I am and how I relate to you at work. And it will show even in how our kids relate to each other at school. Because it's the frame they have, that's the reference they have. So if you want to fix the community or society, you don't wait to speak in parliament. You need to go back to your house, fix what's happening there before you try to attend. So I'm saying even in the church, let's look at what's happening in our home. Do you pray at home? If you can't pray, don't come and force us to pray here. Go and pray in your house first. And when you tell us to come and pray, we'll even believe you because at least it's an extension of it. You understand? We need to just kind of major in the minors first that are more urgent before we try and make a noise about big things.
So who would you say the book is directed to specifically? The youth, the adults who are trying to fix their households, the employed? Like, who is the book directed to exactly?
Because I'll tell you, I would think it's for women.
Yeah.
I might be wrong.
I was waiting for that. You see, I love that. Which is good, by the way, because then I love the honesty of how, and I deliberately did this. I mean, I had to put in my journalism tricks over there, just sell the book and also play with the minds, like how to be a homemaker.
Yes.
People think, are you talking about baking? Yeah, what's it?
Yes, clean
Homemakers. And I'm like, there we go. Got you right there. Because you see, that's the first problem you've got to solve, right? The stereotype. You wanna be able to fix that and teach people to be open-minded. The book, if anything, is far from the kitchen or kitchen things. I talk about leadership over there. I talk about like I said, Ubuntu, society, community, careers. I mean, I talk about a lot of things, right? And I boxed all of this together deliberately because I wanted to speak to a professional, male and female. I wanted to speak to a young person. I also wanted to speak to a society. And people think, or they believe when you write, this won't sell, commercially, you've got to be specific. Are you writing? You must be clear. And I've always been the person who moves against the wave. I'm just built like that. When you say you can't, that's exactly what I'll be doing, because that's just who I am. So I understand the commercial business of publishing, but I said, but this book is for everybody. This book it should be in the library of a home. So a teenager must pick it up and pick up what I talk about. When I struggled with depression and colorism as an issue, and I was dark growing up in my teenage years, and I was, pretty much probably the worst thing to exist because my complexion was a problem in the planet. You want a teenager to come across that. You want a male. Exactly. And know how to navigate that. You want a male or a husband or wife, sisters or whatever, brothers to read this and be like, I actually believe this about social justice, or this is the role I can play in the bigger scheme of things as an individual. So for me, I'd say it's a book for an individual who's really interested in the progression of life and the advancement of development, especially one who's more determined and passionate about, just family as a setup.
Okay, family brings me back to culture. And I see that you're a proponent of identity and knowing where you are. It seems like there's a role between where you come from and who you initially become. And I see it in my Savior, Jesus Christ, which I think is a black man. I'll tell you why. You see, this man, not a lineage, like from son of David, son of what. Yeah, like me, yes, to my purpose here on earth. And you touched on that. And I'd want to know, what's the significance of knowing where you come from in terms of clarification and direction?
Brilliant question. In fact, probably the most important question. And I write about it as well, if you are unclear about where you come from, what do you think are your chances of succeeding in even becoming anything? Because there is no sense of resonance. I always say to people think you need to understand and embrace where you come from, or because the where you come from, it's all. No. Even in the filth, even in the disadvantage, it is where you come from. And if there comes a point where you need to disconnect from that and you feel you want nothing to do with it because it does not represent what you want to become, you still need to go back there, face it honestly and make peace with it, forgive and heal, and then you can move forward. Ignoring it, you're going to struggle when you move forward. I've seen people who just cut ties because next. There's issues because you have not, you have to close it. So you must be bold enough to face it. So I do feel that where you come from, in fact, that's the starting point. If you have not reached that level where you want to go and search where you come from, ask questions about what you don't understand, ask questions about what you didn't like, what you did like, embrace what you did love. And if you want to amplify it in your own life, if you have not reached that level where you humble yourself enough to go back to face either the rot or the beauty of where you come from, chances of you moving forward successfully to the best of your ability will be limited. You move forward. I mean, you move forward.
Because makes sense. Because do we ever get a flower without the roots?
Yeah, you see.
In fact. And I think that speaks to identity as a person. So what would you suggest an individual that is struggling with their identity or has sort of a difficult lineage to sort of backtrack? So they're asking questions, but no answers are given. I mean, the reality of African households is there's some sort of a crack somewhere, somehow, loose link or something. So how would you suggest that they go about dealing with the difficulties they've faced and how it's going to help them move forward, specifically because there's a lot of loopholes in African heritage or household lineage.
Very true. I mean, I even said it, where you come from, it's not always beautiful, right? And I always love how God loves us so much that in Him we have the identity. So as much as we are African, and it's lovely to be African, and we are proud of our roots for being this and that and the other, because Africa is so diverse and beautiful in its nature. At the heart of it all, we're children of God. And for those people who struggle to make that connection, for those people who do not know how to find that trace or how to make amends in that regard, specifically in terms of which tribe are you from, those specific details. As a child of God, you have a home. You have an image. You have an identity. You were created in the image of God, and your identity is that of a child of God. And that, for me, is the premise, by the way, I think in the Christian faith, in the Christian family. That should be the first base, by the way, of how we interact with each other. Because we're sitting here together, all three of us, and we different tribes. Already there's 3 different colors over here. But our faith puts it into one context. There's literally nothing beyond and above that. And I would advise anybody who struggles, perhaps who's got some issues there, to not let that break them. To be like, oh, I'd love to be. In fact, you know what? Be bold enough if by the way, there's any tribe you like, ask them to adopt you. Really, ask them to adopt you, dress like them, because you love it. And if you identify like them, seek to know and understand what they stand for, and then let them embrace you. There's nothing wrong, by the way, if you want to. This is now for extreme cases where people have no clue where they come from, and there's no trace, no nothing, there's literally nothing. With God, you are everything, not just something. You are everything. But if you really deeply want to belong to something, so that during cultural night, you have to dress, Pella, you need something. Avoid your t-shirts and jeans. What can you pick? Something, the one you like. Something. But learn about it, immerse yourself in it, especially if it speaks to values that have already been eminent in your life. Like, this is who I am naturally, Jay. I'm like this. So maybe this culture, these are my people. I see nothing wrong with that, especially if they're happy to embrace you and teach you their ways.
Okay, sister. You mentioned Ubuntu. I am what I am because of who we are. But the reality check. We're in the 21st century. Colonialism, capitalism, individualism. I can tell you, it's all about I. And, in relation to what you write in terms of community, like that building, what role has individualism played in eradicating humanity and community? And what should we do about it? Because I don't think there's still humanity. I mean, when you used to grow up in the car, see, you greet those, but right now, it's my business, man. Why should I even greet you? You understand? So what role is this, I think, is it playing in terms of eradicating our sense of community?
Hey. Okay, I'm not a fan of individualism, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm also a very honest person. Like, I'm not going to lie about what I don't like and what I like. I'm not a fan of individualism. Also because I'm 40 years now. It may not be a big age. It's not a small age either. But I think I've seen enough to know that individualism is actually dangerous, especially in the context of Africa, because as much as the West really makes it the center and the fuss of one's peace, one's sense of strength. Well, yeah, to some extent, I suppose. But there's a payment for that.
Yeah.
So this often would come at the expense of a family, right? The more in tune you are with yourself, the more, in my view, I'm not a psychologist. This is just Jabu's opinion.
Disclaimer right there.
Oh yeah, so don't kill me.
Yeah.
It's the more a family would suffer because it's all about you. This is the hedge, and nobody comes in here. Hear me carefully. It's not entirely wrong, but it's borderline dangerous to some extent, because there are people who cannot perhaps enter into your space.
Okay.
And this is often preached as, this is my safe space and you have a right to it because you've got to do some self-care, which is good to some extent, but that needs context as well. But it's difficult for us to build together as people, as communities, if individualism is at the center of how we operate. So, and I always say, individualism to some extent, actually, in my view, is the enemy of humility. Because for as long as nobody's willing to be humble among the three of us here, and I want to hold on to my individualism, you want to hold on to your individualism, we're going to struggle to build something together. So I always say that for anything to move forward, for us to build the communities we want that are thriving, I believe in thriving communities. And I'm not just fascinated with community for just because. I do truly believe in thriving communities, because I think a community that is correct, that's proper, that for me is the ingredient of greatness, right? You start there first. But we can't get to that if nobody is willing to be humble, right? So individualism, in my view, I think to some extent is okay. If you want to do self-care.
Yeah.
And also if you really want to align to that Eurocentric kind of thinking at some point, it's okay. But you want to be African, build other people and share and serve, mostly serve. And I want to sit there for a while, serve. You cannot. You're going to struggle to serve if you are an individualistic person, if you are, it's all about me, because you, even in your service, you're still serving yourself. When you should be serving your followers, you still serve yourself because you fail to fathom the idea of you sharing with your essence of leadership, of service, of anything else with other people. That's a problem, because then what are you building and who are you building? So I feel like embrace it. Like I said, I'm not here to bash that, but be aware that it's a catalyst for disaster. Should you carry on and really put it at the pinnacle of me? You do it because as a person, you've got to center yourself once in a while.
You can't pour from an empty cup, because someone will say,
you got to center yourself, right? So you can be full enough to give. But that can't be your drive. That's a bit problematic for me. You always have to think community. Well, I think community. I'm not forcing anybody to. But you got to think community. If progress, change, impact, servant leadership, if you believe in those principles, you should be talking community, not self. Even though people do self. Because self is always faster, easier, nicer. And don't disturb me. We're good over here for a while. At some point, God wants us to go out there. Relationship is key. That's why I'm not even a fan of network, quickly, just to pass on. Networking is a bit dangerous for me because it's all about, I will network with you because you have this.
Yes.
And I'm going to gain that thing.
Yeah.
But I could just have a relationship there, even if you don't have whatever. Because network, should you lose what you have, that I gave value, I don't need to network with you anymore because I'm no longer a beneficiary of whatever I did to you. But if I have a relationship with you, if I build with you a relationship, even that relationship can even serve people in our own spaces. Something may happen to me, and God forbid, you may know somebody who comes from my family. I knew you, and you may see them in need and help them because you knew me. That's how important relationship is versus networking. By the way, I was inspired by this concept when it was shared by Pastor Stu Blosing, who really spoke about the difference between networking and building relationships. We should be building relationships, not networking.
Jam, I love what you just said, because it's like we now invested in what you have, not who you are.
Yeah.
And in the context of community, I love what you say. It's like I look at Jesus Christ. His church today is still, quote unquote, profitable in his business.
Yeah.
Because I see he never invested in things, but he invested in beings. And that is why, that's the thing, I think that's the chat for Africans that we can have one day. Yes.
No, Sister, I just want to find out from you, post-colonial, and post in middle capitalism and stuff. I want to find out, as a person that has lived their childhood in hectic Ubuntu, right? And having to sort of adapt to a new way of Ubuntu, where do you think we are currently as an African society with Ubuntu?
Okay. Are you sure you want to answer that? That might let me into some trouble. I know I'm not happy with where we are. No, that's the honest truth. I'm not happy with where we are.
Why?
I'm not happy with where we are. I'm not happy with where we are as African people. In fact, we are regressing. I'm not happy about that. It does not fascinate me. It does not excite me. I'm not happy with where we are as African people when it comes to Ubuntu. Listen, the big elephant in the room, Ubuntu, xenophobia, for example. I don't want to get into politics about the do's and don'ts, the law. Law must prevail, justice must prevail. Those, for me, we don't debate about that. Right? Any country. But the biggest elephant in the room, and I always say, you can hate me for this, it is xenophobia. And then you take it even further down, you have to also deal with tribalism. It's an issue. It's even in the church. You see it in how we act with, oh, this one is Zulu, this one is Xhosa, so I can relate. And this is one church that is supposed to just do one thing right, just one. Just deliver the Sabbath day. That's it. There's nothing else required out of you. You just have to deliver the Sabbath day. But you'll find tribalism having fun over there. So I'm not happy because, again, well, it's the wind. I mean, we have beautiful space over here. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Right? So I feel that we need to do more. And nothing new, by the way. And that's why I like that question. It's difficult, but we just have to go back to the basics. We just have to go back to the basics of relating human to human. Sawubona, I see you. Dumela. You know, I see you as a person before I relate to you because of any other class. I just see you from human to human. I relate to you in this particular way. That's it. Let's start there. You are human. I'm human. That's the first base. And in my view, that's the most important base, by the way. Nothing else matters after that. I'm personally not interested, actually, in anything that comes after that, right? My concern in life has always been, are you a good person or not? If you're a bad person, then I know not to deal with you. But if you're a good person, this is great. So here's a good person. How can we move humanity forward together? So I feel like we need to go back to basics. And when I mean going back to basics, we need to do simple things. Be kind. Be kind. Do not break what you cannot build. It's as simple as that. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to take a philosophy class to talk about who we are as Africans, who helped who back in the day, therefore you must help me now. That's a political issue that politicians must fix, right? But as a young Black Christian, whether millennial or Gen Z, what is your role in the context of the narrative today in the socio-economic space? Because it's happening in front of your eyes. What are you saying about it? Are you quiet? Meaning, do you agree with how people tell others, oh, go home, mabambe, or no, this tribe is better than the other? Do you agree? And if you don't agree, how are you then disagree? By speaking up, or what are you? We need to start there, because we need to be just as well, right? And we need to be truthful. And this, for me, are biblical principles. God, in fact, in my view, has capacitated us that way. If we cannot be truthful, honest, and move in integrity, why are we even doing what we're doing? Because then what exactly are we standing for? And those things are not big. They just mean be kind to another person, because that's what Ubuntu means. Because without that person, how far is the extent of my greatness as a human being? And how far is the extent of our greatness as people? So, yeah, and I mean, I just feel like it's not a big thing. People make it big because people have some hearts that are weird. But I think you can fix a weird heart. You can stand against what is wrong. You can. Everybody should. Because God gave us, in the book of Genesis, the very beginning chapter of the Bible, when God said, I'll make you greater than creatures, that for me was the first assignment of leadership that was assigned to us. We are leaders. It's not, when people claim to be leaders, don't debate with them. They are correct. They are leaders. Because the Bible, from the book of Genesis, God said, you will rule over. So the creatures will not be above you. You will be above them. We've been assigned that sense of leadership, that capacity to serve and to lead. So in the same capacity, you've got to be able to go back to basics. Greet your neighbor. That's it. Just say hello. Because you're a Christian and you believe in goodwill and good manners. Greet. If somebody's in need and you're in a position to provide that need without broadcasting it on satellite to say you've offered that need, that help, do it. It's in those acts for me that often should take place even without the camel. Nobody's looking. Nobody even knows what you've done. But what you've done, if people were to see, they'd be like, now that's a Christian. So we need to go back to basics. We are regressing, it's a fact. But I think we are capable to do better, and we can. It's just that we have some pressing issues that need to be dealt in different spheres, in different rooms. But Christians have an opportunity to, even in the thick of things, still uphold a sense of humanity. If there's anybody in the whole country should be upholding a sense of sanity and being a voice of reason, is the Christians.
Yeah. Guys, you've got to be a human being. And it starts with you greeting your neighbor, your classmate, whatever the case might be. And as we continue, I love how you mentioned Abraham there, and I love it because it's in the context of the current Miss SA debacle. And I see some fake patriotism that only comes when it involves a black child. But yeah, who's representing us? Did you go and interrogate now that white person in terms of their roots? But that's fine. The topic for another day. We're so patriotic when it comes to the blacks. But the white ones, did you check their genetical heritage? But anyway, it's a topic for another day. Sister, my departing question would be African therapy in a way. And how did we used to voice out our concerns? Whether someone is saying, I'm willing to love, to give love a chance, but one's experience with power, as you mentioned, one's experience with power can sort of,
Yeah.
So I don't know if someone says, I really want to be in love, but how do I first heal that relation that I have with a male figure who was emotionally negligent, who was toxic towards me?
Yeah. Very important question. So I think African people are not fans of therapy. I wasn't a fan of therapy myself, but I realized as you grow older that actually there's nothing wrong with therapy. Okay. Therapy is actually very important. I don't think there's anything wrong. I learned in my life to start taking it as a conversation with a friend I really trust. So I can be able to detox and decipher some of the most urgent things that are also problematic in my own life. I mean, we're not all perfect people. Some of us are also problematic in some ways to the people in our lives. So it's really, again, an African thing, because we come from the context of, I suppose, a community of families where if you go for therapies like into Zabelu, why are you going? Just pray about this. So we must pray away depression, we must pray away anxiety, we must pray away, to a point where people die, sadly, because it was really just perhaps maybe an imbalance of whatever. The psychologists can explain it better. That really needed health, an intervention of help or of health to some extent. So I do feel like we need to, first of all, just decipher. Also, this thing of, I'm African and it's great to be African. When you are African, I always say, just be African. Like, don't make a noise for us. Please be African in peace. Enjoy your Africanness. Don't make a noise for us. We are also African. We're not making a noise for anybody. This Africanness that you want to really just always bulldoze over others, and I find it very annoying, number one. But I also find it scary because, this Africanness is very scary. There's so much tension in this Africanness. You must be this, you can't be that. So a man can't go for therapy because he's African. That is toxic. But the man needs help. Why can't a man cry? Why can't a man be vulnerable? Why can't a man have a safe space to address what they need to address? Why can't families sit and talk about the most difficult conversations that are a hindrance to living their best life as families? But they can't live this best life because nobody wants to talk about the elephant in the room. Because we are African. Why? Because we are African? That's toxic and problematic to me. There's nothing wrong with therapy. And if you don't want to sit by the couch next to some stranger who's going to be recording you and taking notes as you speak, man, then talk to a friend. Build safe friendships. Or journal. Or write like I do. I don't talk to a lot of people. I'm also quite shy. So most of my secrets are probably in the journal. Not really people feel so I mean, you just talk to your journal. I think there's plenty of avenues. You can play a guitar, you can write poetry, you can take a walk in the garden, go to the gym. Man, therapy is not just talking. Therapy is a way of life. That's why it should never be a session. If you believe in that form of therapy of, okay, let me visit a therapist, then do that. But there's many other aspects in my view. You can just join a gym. You can start an exercise that you love. You can start gardening, planting, drawing, painting, express therapy. All that therapy is doing is trying to give you expression so you can have an outlet. Because people without an outlet die. And then we all cry at the funeral, but there was no outlet. And even when they wanted to attend an outlet with us, we didn't allow them. So find an outlet for yourself that works. I journal, I write poetry, I play golf, I do a number of things. Those are my outlets. So yes, I believe in therapy. A couple of times I'd go there if I really have to, if there's an emergency. But otherwise, I'm able to manage it because I've brought some interventions in my life that are part of my lifestyle to always help me address and unlearn, decipher, and detox some of the things I need. So I can be a healthy, functioning adult. Because there are adults walking around who are problematic and unhealthy, and they think there's nothing wrong with that. But there's everything wrong with that, because we cannot build communities as sick people. So you've got to fix yourself.
All right, ladies and I know you want us to continue, but I need you to buy the book, so I'm not going to continue. It is the Advent Pod SA. Guys, you better get yourself The Heart of a Homemaker. All right, can you hear me? Oh, lift it up. Oh, sorry. The Heart of a Homemaker. It is available. We will be sharing it on our description box. Go and buy it if you want to heal. If you want to move from being so egotistical and narcissistic, get yourself this book. And if you want to build a home, an Africa that we all aspire to have, go do the right thing. This is Jabu. Siyabonga Mashenga for what you've done. Thank you so much for coming through. Any word you want to say to the young people?
Right. So, I mean, I think being African is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if I died and came back, I'd want to be African. Still. Because for simple reasons, we are such a wonderful, strong, richly strong, by the way, people, but we don't celebrate that anymore. Starting with the basics, we don't even tell our stories enough. Like, you've got to tell your story. And if there's anything this book must do, in my view, it should help you tell your own story too. You know, don't outsource your storytelling or your experience to another person, right? It's very important for us to be bold enough in how we tell our stories, document our stories. But also to young people. Those are my favorite people. I love young people. And I can never be anywhere and not say something to young people. The sooner you learn to embrace who you are, the better for you. It helps you in your adulthood. This is not just some motivational thing. It is the truth. It is the truth. The sooner you learn to embrace even your faults and the weaknesses, and you deal with them and fix them, the better you equip yourself to living your best life. Your best life is not with the hashtags and social media. Your best life is your healed self, your sane self, your capacitated self. So I would advise any young person to be bold enough to take those steps and take who you are seriously. Sometimes some things are not fashionable, but I always say the more unfashionable it is, in my view, you actually even telling that's too fashionable. So it means I should actually pursue that. So don't sit there and belittle yourself about I can't do this, I'm not this, I'm not that. Look at what it is that you are right now, what is in your hands, and really just start from there. It doesn't really take a lot of speeches. Just start from where you are. You'll see, once you start, it'll grow. Just start. Wherever you are, just start.
Hey, Bobby, close it up for us, man.
Well, as they say, thank you everyone for tuning in. This episode was sponsored by Notlo's Touch for Beauty and Perfection Spa. So do check them out on social media and come and get your, maintenance done as my ladies. Don't forget to get the book. Trust you me. The best thing to ever happen to a young person, an adult, and everyone. Thank you so much. Tapping out.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Good.